We've hit the midway mark of the Maple Leafs season. On today's show, we'll tell you where the team sits amongst the rest of the league. We'll discuss some of the biggest first half storylines, as well as hand out some player grades for the first 41 games of the season. We'll discuss all that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 wager. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. What's going on, Dave? We are officially at the halfway mark of the Maple Leaf season. 41 games in the books, 41 games still to come. But as we sit right now, we will reflect on the first half of the year. We'll tell you exactly where the team is at right now in the standings, tell you where they're at in terms of, where they're statistically, some of the first half storylines, and then we will grade each player on their first half performance. So we could start with where the team sits right now, Dave, and the team is 21-12-8 through the first 41 games of the regular season. They have 50 points on the year so far, so I guess, they're on pace to be below where they've been over the last couple of years, on pace for just 100 points, and they've been, they've surpassed that 3 straight seasons. So, what do you make of that so far?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not as good as we were expecting. Like we went into the season thinking that this team was going to challenge for the Atlantic Division, surpass what they did in past years. We even said I think their over under was in like the 104, 105 and a half range.
Yeah,
and we said they should be able to get the over on that. And so you look at some of the issues that they've had this year. The big one for me has been their home record, 10-9-2 at home.
yeah.
Those are just points you're allowing in that first half. You're losing those points at home, and it's going to have you're going to go at the end of the season and say, if only they had won X amount of games at home, they'd be much better than what they are in.
Yeah, and I think that's, one of the storylines, I guess, if we look at it, is their poor record when they're at home at Scotiabank Arena, which is very surprising because last year they were a very good home team. Like they only had 4 or 6 losses or something like that at home last year. Like there wasn't a lot of home losses. Like Ilya Samsonov in particular was terrific at Scotiabank Arena last year.
Yeah.
Another one of those storylines that we'll get to in just a moment here. But I'm with you. I think when you grade the team as a whole through their first 41 games of the year, I think you could say it's been rather disappointing. They've been very inconsistent. You thought this year with the turnover up top, there's a bunch of new players that were brought in that was supposed to be for the better. It's been kind of, I guess, 50-50. Some of them have worked out. Tyler Bertuzzi, Max Domi, I think those have worked out in the favor of the Maple Leafs. But then you look at, John Klingberg and you look at Ryan Reeves. Those signings have not quite worked out the way that the Toronto Maple Leafs thought they would. So it's been kind of a middling, start to this year, I suppose. There's been some good spurts. There's been some bad spurts. Currently, Leafs in one of those poor ones right now where they've, given up 3 straight games with leads, obviously. But I think overall, the team's still in a playoff spot, right? They still currently sit, what are they, 3rd in the Atlantic Division, with games in hand on both the teams that are chasing them in Detroit and Tampa Bay. But I still think that we need to see more out of this group over the course of the next 41 games to look at them and say, yep, they should definitely be contenders for the Stanley Cup come April.
Yeah, I mean, to say whether or not a team is definitively a contender or not in January, sometimes it's a little, you're putting yourself in a pretty tough position. Like, pretty sure the Florida Panthers were not even in a playoff team in January, and then they ended up going to the Stanley Cup final. Now, the Leafs have, I think, more issues right now to deal with than what the Florida Panthers had to deal with last year. So I also, I just don't like to get into the definitive, this is who they are 41 games in the season, because again, still have half a season to go. They could change a few things, a few of the narratives around them, but we can certainly look at areas of their game and say, yeah, this is a concern now and likely will be a concern until the end of the season.
Yeah, I think one of those concerns is obviously in goal and defensively, and it's showed up. A lot of times this year. You look at where this team ranks in terms of goals against. Like they've given up a lot of goals. They've given up 3.24 goals against per game, which I believe ranks in what 20th. I want to say 21st in the NHL in goals allowed per game, and their penalty kills just 77%, which is not a great penalty kill. It's another one that's kind of middle of the pack, a little bit more bottom tier. Ranks They're 24th ranked penalty kill right now, and even the power play has not been super stellar at just 25%. It's been above that more recently. So a lot of underperforming. You know, s- um, a lot of underperforming players, a lot of underperforming uh what's the word I'm looking for here? Um like aspects of the game, like special teams is
Yeah.
underperforming defensively. So when we take a look at maybe the top storylines of the first half, I think that you could say inconsistent play would be one of them. They've been extremely inconsistent, and I think that goes hand in hand with the goaltending and the defending. Is from game to game, you don't really know what you're going to get from their blue line. Are they going to come out and are they going to be, flawless and not make mistakes? Are they going to, make those easy outlet passes to try and get the puck going in the opposite way? Or are they going to give the puck up and turn it over 4, 5, 6 times in a game like we've seen? It all depends. So I think that's one of the top storylines so far. The first half is extremely inconsistent play from this Maple Leafs team.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the biggest issue right now is a contending team. You know what you're going to get from them each and every night. Problem with the Toronto Maple Leafs, we don't know. We just haven't really known from the start of the season, right? Like, how many of those games did they allow 4 more goals at home, right?
Yeah.
It's like you don't know what you're going to get from this team defensively each night. We know which players need to come out and have the big offensive games in order to win, right? Like, that's something you can consistently say about this team. But defensively, it's like you don't know what you're going to get because there's so many different variables that have worked against them since the start of the year.
Yeah. Another top storyline of the first half, goaltending. Ilya Samsonov falling off a cliff has definitely been a big storyline, and especially of late. With him getting sent down on waivers, getting unclaimed, and then going down to the minors. Didn't even play a single game before finally coming back up this past weekend, and getting into a matchup looked a little bit better. But I think that's just a massive story. I mean, this was a guy who was your number one last year in the playoffs, and all of a sudden he come out this year and it's like, okay, you're going to be the 1A. Joseph Woll is going to be able to compete with you, but you're the 1A. And all of a sudden, it got to a point where this team couldn't trot him out there. There was just no faith in what that guy was doing in his crease, to the point where they literally sent him down to the minors to work on his game before bringing him back up to the show. I think that is such a massive storyline and a big reason for why this team is not necessarily in a hole, but why they're not as far ahead as they could be. Right, like his 870 save percentage in his starts is definitely a big reason for why the Maple Leafs have more L's on their record than they did at this point in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the teams that have really good goalies, like they'll say, "Oh, this team is really good defensively." Well, at the same time, some of these teams also have good goaltending that can mask some of the defensive problems. And like Samsonov hasn't been able to bail out when the defense has had those breakdowns, right? He's supposed to be the last line of defense. Did I expect Samsonov to be, a great goaltender year in, year out? Tough to say. He's had the inconsistency in his career. I did not expect this guy to have a sub 900 save percentage
No.
this season. Not at all.
Sub 870 save
Yeah.
percentage.
Like it's mind-boggling. Like when you have such a drastic turnaround in your goaltending performance, you're going to struggle as a team, right? Because even the good defensive teams, look at Carolina right now. They've been known as such a great structured defensive team, but if you're not getting the saves, if you're not getting the goaltending, it doesn't matter. How much you improve your defense or how good your defense plays. If you're not getting the goaltending, you're going to struggle as a team. And so, yeah, we could talk about how the defense has been inconsistent, but they haven't been getting the saves either.
No. On the flip side, though, they are getting the saves from Martin Jones, who's been a nice bright spot this season. 8-4-1 record, a 924 save percentage, and a 230 goals against average over the course of his 12 starts for the Leafs. I don't want to say it was, season saving, but definitely with the Woll injury and then how poorly that guy, Samsonov, had played, having him come in and kind of stabilize the net for a couple of weeks there certainly was nice to see from a Maple Leafs perspective. Is there one other storyline that you can think of that has been a big point of emphasis throughout the first 41 games this year for the Leafs?
I think the failed John Klingberg experiment.
Yep. You throw Reeves in there too, both of them.
Yeah, but I think the John Klingberg's a bigger one because he was penciled in as your top 4 right-handed shot defenseman and
top power play unit guy.
And now you don't have him anymore, right? And that's a hole that they likely aren't going to be able to really fill. I don't see like how the path right now, unless they're willing to give up assets and find ways to make salaries work, right? Because they're in a cap crunch.
Could. Yeah, they could.
They could make things work with salary retention and things like that. I get that, but that's like how many teams are offering up a top 4 defenseman right now? Not
a
many.
whole lot.
Even the ones the Leafs were looking at aren't, I don't think, currently available.
Yeah, like Tanev, I think eventually will become available. I think he's someone that they probably would be interested in. I think I saw, is it Sean Walker who's out in Philadelphia?
Yep.
I think his name still is kind of out there as a possibility. I mean, there's still a lot of time between now and the trade deadline for these names to become available, and I'm sure we'll talk about it ad nausea between now and then for the loyal listeners of the show. You'll hear us talk about this stuff for sure. But yeah, that's certainly John Klingberg just not working out, the injury, and now he's completely, gone from the team. Yeah, definitely a big storyline, a big swing and miss from the general manager, Brad Treliving. Definitely a massive storyline earlier in the season. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back. Let's start to grade the forwards for the Maple Leafs, and then we'll get to the defense and the goaltenders. We'll do that all next. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapped up, and there's still time to get on the action with FanDuel. It's North America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to make a bet. You got live same-game parlays. You can make a parlay from the Parlay Hub to find the most popular ones of the day. You can also find bets in the new Explore tab and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the Locked On Network. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. We're doing a special mid-season report card for the Toronto Maple Leafs. 41 games in the books, 41 games to go for Toronto. They're 21-12-8 through the first half of the season. 50 points, on pace for 100. Still probably a playoff team when all said and done, but definitely has been, I would say, a little underwhelming for what we thought they could be, certainly to this point in the season. But still time to turn things around and, get themselves back into contender status. But let's grade out some of these players and see individually how we think these guys have performed. We'll kind of rapid fire it. We'll keep it pretty quick because there's going to be a lot of names to go through. But we'll start up at the top of the list here with some of the big boys. Let's start with Austin Matthews. How would you grade Austin Matthews' season so far, Dave? 40 games, 33 goals, 48 points in total. What grade you giving him?
I got to give him an A plus. I mean, leading the league in goals, talking about the potential of this guy, maybe getting to 70, pushing for 70. 60 looks like, I mean, if he's continues on the pace, 60 is going to happen and no problem. Even 65.
He's on pace right now for 66, right? 66 goals is what he's on pace for.
And he's been, and like he's a guy that doesn't score every night. It comes in bunches at times, right? You'll get a 2-goal game, you'll get a hat trick whenever kind of feels like it. So he's put on like this. He's made it look easy. I would say this season, like it's almost looked effortless for him, which for a guy who's putting up on pace for, as you said, 66 goals, not many that can say that in the NHL.
Yeah, I'll give him an A. The only reason why I'm going to give it an A plus is because, to your point, there have been stretches where we've kind of seen him go a little quiet. Like there was a 7-game stretch where he hadn't scored, and then I think he went another 9 games where he only had like 2 goals in that stretch, but then rattled off from December 1st onward, he's been a over a goal a game, I believe is the number there, or at a goal a game or something close to that. So he's been unbelievable since December 1st, obviously. But there were some dry spells there early on in the year where William Nylander kind of had to take over as the team's lead dog and try and weather through some of the early season hurdles. So that's the only reason why I'm going to give him an A instead of an A plus. Is early on it was a little inconsistent from Austin Matthews after starting the year off with back-to-back hat tricks. Then he went cold. All right, let's talk about William Nylander, the next up on our list. What's he got? 41 games, 21 goals, 36 assists for 57 points.
Yeah, he's an easy A for me. Just he's actually probably been the most consistent. Yes, the last, I guess, since he signed his contract, people want to bring up he hasn't put up the points he did before. But he really has been the most consistent player from the start of the season.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm giving him an A as well. I mean, he was voted. He was the number 1 voted player into the All-Star game as well. Extremely well deserved to get that nod. He deserves it. He's been excellent. And like we said, early in the year, he was the guy leading this team, leading the charge. Whether he was driving a line on the second line or even when he was playing up with Austin, like he was still finding ways to contribute, score, and set up Matthews. I think that he's been an excellent player this season. He's top 10 in league scoring. How can you not look at this player and think, man, he's been so good for this team? He's had more of a commitment to a two-way game. He's killing some penalties. He's playing a little bit better on his own end. So overall, I think you got to be extremely happy with the season that William Nylander has had. But yeah, hopefully this little dry spell he's been in over the course of the last few games, going out west, are going to need that Nylander magic back for the squad to start winning some hockey games again. Let's go to Mitch Marner, the other guy there that we talk about a lot, part of that top trio of players for the Maple Leafs. He's got 18 goals, 28 assists, 46 points through 41 games. Your grade, sir?
I'm going to give him an A minus. I think, he's putting up the points. He's had good offensive performances. He has taken a step back defensively. Now, it hasn't been to the point where he's been a liability defensively, but not to the sulky level that he was last year. So yeah, I think he's still have he puts up performances where you're like, yeah, this guy is still an all-star elite player. It's just he's not having as good of a season as I thought he had last year.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Marner's season, and I think that's like you can look at it as a bit of a compliment in a way. I'm just gonna give him a B. I think that
Mhm.
he's had for his standards a pretty down year for for what we should expect out of him, and what he should expect for himself. To your point, I think he's putting up points, sure, but there's a lot of nights where he's going through the game and we're thinking to ourselves, where's Mitch Marner tonight? Where was that guy? Like when we talk about inconsistency, he kind of is that player. Like I've long believed that this team's DNA somewhat, is in the hands of Mitch Marner. Like that he is almost like the engine of this team, as good as Austin Matthews is, and as good as William Nylander has been. Like this team often emulates what type of performance Mitch Marner puts forward. And when he's kind of sluggish and not really playing up to his abilities, the team usually suffers from it because he's just always on the ice, on the power play, on the penalty kill at 5-on-5. He's just on the ice for a third of the hockey game, more than any other forward, I suppose, on the team. So it makes sense in that regard. And I just think that, there's been too many nights where he's been silent and quiet. There's been nights where he's, put up a bunch of points to where I think his point totals look fine. They look great, 46 and 41. It's over a point per game. But there's been a lot of nights too where it's like, oh, that was a quiet 3-point night. Oh, that was a quiet 4-point night. Kind of pad the stats, but overall, I expect more out of Marner. To me, the eye test, it just hasn't looked as good as what we've seen, and I think there's more to his game, both offensively and defensively, and I want to see that in the next 41 games of the year. So I'm just going to give him a B.
I guess maybe I've been too harsh on Martin in the past. Maybe I'm trying to compensate a little bit for that, but I agree with what
Perhaps. Perhaps. All right, we gotta pick things up rapid
yeah.
fire. John Tavares, what are you doing? What grade does the captain get? John Tavares, 12 goals, 22 assists, 34 points in 41 games.
I'm going B minus. I think he had gone to a good start. I think there's nights where he's not at his best, but at the same time, there are areas of his game that I like that other guys aren't bringing, like the face off dot. He's one of the better ones on the team, one of the few I trust to be out there for a key face off, and I think he's looked better at 5-on-5 this year than he did last year. But I think a lot of that credit also goes to William Nylander and the way he's been able to play on that line.
Yeah, I think that's somewhat fair to say. I think that maybe earlier in the year it made a little bit more sense. But lately, like he's been very, very quiet when it comes to scoring. Not just goals, but even just like putting up points. This is a player who's been a point per game guy his whole career since he's been here in Toronto. But if you look at the course of, if you go back to the game against the Rangers, what's that? December 19th. Since December 19th, all the way until this past weekend against Detroit, he's got just 5 points in his last 13 games, and two of them have been on the power play. So just 1 point at 5-on-5 over the course of his last 13 games. For a guy who's making 11 million, and I hate to bring the contract into it, but for a guy that's making 11 million, that's not
He needs
good.
to be better. No, needs to be
Needs to
better.
be better. And if this was if I was looking at the first quarter mark of the season, I think he would deserve a B. But if I'm actually looking at John Tavares and what he's done through the whole season to this point, if I wanted to be generous, I think I could give him a B minus. If I wanted to be generous, do I want to be generous, Dave? Should I be generous? Should we give this guy a little bit of a break here, and just award him a B minus, or should I give him a C plus? What should I do, Dave?
I mean, the thing is, I'm looking at more of the whole body and not just like a 13 game stretch.
Well, the
Like,
13 game stretch,
yeah,
that's like D plus C minus territory here.
yeah. I think he is like the points for me. Points is not everything. Of course, when you're getting 11 million, You should be closer to that point per game mark.
But he's also like, let me also, so through those games, right,
Mhm.
that I mentioned, he's been a minus player in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of the last 13
Mm.
games, he's been a minus player.
Yeah.
C plus. Sorry.
Sure.
I got to give him a C plus. It just on both ends of the ice, man. It hasn't been there for him over the past little bit, and I hate to say that age is becoming a factor here for John Tavares, but we all kind of looked at that contract when it was first signed and thought, nah, those last couple of years might be iffy. It looks like it might be starting to show up here recently. Okay, Tyler Bertuzzi, the newcomer for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He currently has 6 goals, 13 assists, 19 points through 41 games. What's your grade for Tyler Bertuzzi?
Um, I'm like at a C plus because I think his start wasn't great. Right, he was the guy that got a lot of heat from Sheldon Keefe on how his season was going, getting benched, getting moved around. But then he shows in spurts why he is such a unique player on this team because he does he's relentless on the forecheck. He finds ways to get into the dirty areas so that Tavares and Nylander can get their chances in front of the net and things like that. But I just haven't seen it consistently enough for a guy that's getting paid $5 million, which on this team, a $5 million player is viewed a little differently than guys making $10+ million. I just, from what we saw from him in the playoffs against Boston and at times last year, I expected a little bit more, especially at the start of the year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm gonna give him a B minus because I think that if you just look at the overall production that he's gotten so far to this point in the year, like he's been a guy who's been really snake bitten. I mean, for him to just have 6 goals when you consider how good he's played, to me is kind of wild considering that he is a 20 to 25 goal scorer. Like that is what Tyler Bertuzzi is, and what you expect for him to be on pace for just 12 goals is kind of wild. I think he's been better. He's been someone who I believe leads this team in expected goals. So he's playing really well on both ends of the ice so far this year. He's got just a 7% shooting this season too, so a little bit low. And you would expect for that to kind of tick up closer to 12%. So he should have a little bit more offense than he's gotten this point in the year. I'm gonna give him a B minus though. I think there's been more good than bad games for Bertuzzi for me, so I'll give him a B minus, a little bit better than the grade that you gave. All right, quickly, Max Domi, 4 goals, 19 points, 4 goals, 19 assists, 23 points in 41 games.
I'm going to give him a B minus because I had no idea what exactly Max Domi was going to be for this team.
Yeah.
Turning into the third line center right now, having some pretty decent games, bring a little bit of that edge. I like it. I think he's found himself a role, and is he going to be the third line center for the rest of the year? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to find someone else, given what the limitations will be at this trade deadline, but he stepped in and he's filled that role pretty nicely.
I'm with you. B minus for Domi. He another guy who started out a little slow, but then really started to make a name for himself when he got made the adjustment to the center of the ice, and he's been great ever since. Leads the NHL in assists at 5-on-5 this year, so he's been a solid addition for the Maple Leafs this offseason. Okay, Calle Yarncroke. 10 goals, 9 assists, 19 points in 41 games. Calle Yarncroke.
I'm going to give him a B minus because he's the guy that Sheldon Keefe has had to thrust into so many different roles. Top lines playing poorly defensively. Yeah, Calle, you're going there. Second line's not playing great defensively. Calle, you're going there. He's had to, take. Maybe I should give him a higher grade just for that reason, for him to have to babysit other guys defensively.
I'm giving him a B plus. I think he's been
great.
great.
You know what? I'll give him a B plus too because I've talked myself into it. I think we can't always look at point production for guys because that's not what they're always paid to do. Calle Yarncroke, I've I thought maybe the Leafs should have considered trading him going into the year because of the salary cap and trying to make space for other guys on the roster. Shame on me for doing that because this team would not be as good if Cal Yarncroke wasn't on this team.
Yeah, he's provided a lot of offense. Well, not a. Sorry, that's not the way I wanted to put it. He's provided a lot of value, rather. I think at that contract, 2.1, I think he's definitely earned his money and maybe even a bit more. The way that he's played for sure on both ends of the ice. To your point, Matthew Nyes, what grade are we giving young Matthew Nyes, who at this point is what's he got here? 8 goals, 8 assists, 16 points in 39 games.
I'm gonna give him a B plus. I thought I was gonna see a little more offense from him, but there's been some rookie moments where he's made mistakes defensively or he's made an error and it's led to a goal. So there's things like that. But there's no questioning his drive. Like when you think of like when they let a Zach Hyman go, he was kind of like the engine guy, the guy that gave you the effort, found ways to just impact the play without the puck. That's what Matthew Nyes has brought this year. I just expected a little bit more playing on that top line offensively, but also the guy's not getting power play time. So I should also discount that shouldn't be held on us on Matthew Nyes. But yeah, I've really liked his game. I just think there's been some rookie moments there, and Sheldon Keefe, I don't think has used them properly at times.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I've really liked his game, especially lately. His relentlessness to go and chase a puck and keep possessions alive for Marner and Matthews. I've like what he does, not only on the puck but also his style off the puck. I think has led to some good things with that lineup and that trio. So I think Matthew Nyes a B plus is an appropriate grade. Okay, let's rapid fire this one. Okay, I just want the grade
Yeah, okay.
for the rest of these players, and then we'll kind of try and quickly move on, and then go to spend some time on the defense. Nick Robertson, 6 goals, 6 assists, 12 points through 26 games.
C plus.
I'm gonna give him a C minus. He hasn't really done much for me, to be quite honest with you. And the fact that he's been a healthy scratch multiple times lately, yeah, I think C minus is appropriate. Noah Gregor, 5 goals, 3 assists, 8 points through 40 games.
B minus.
I think that's fair. B minus. Yeah. I think for someone who's come in and he's making minimum contract, he's been a big part of the team's penalty kill. I think a B minus is fair. David Kampf, you can have a little bit more to say here.
D minus. He's
Yeah.
supposed to be the defensively reliable center. He got a pay raise, a long term, pretty decent extension for a guy that's viewed as a bottom six. At this rate, fourth line center. We thought maybe would have had to play third line center, and honestly, he's been kind of part of the reason why this team has had struggles defensively because he hasn't been responsible enough in the role he's being paid to be.
Big time. Big time. I agree with you. And I would see a -7 so far this season. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I think a D minus is probably the appropriate grade for David Kampf. Pontus Holmberg, just 15 games, but he's got himself a couple of goals, 5 points in total. Pontus Goldberg, apparently, as he's being nicknamed at this point now.
I'll do a B. I'll do a B for Pontus Holmberg.
Yeah, kind of a short, short time span he's been with the team, so I think it's appropriate. B minus. If you take over the last couple of games, you can tick that up to a B for sure. Lastly, Ryan Reeves.
D minus, maybe an F. Actually, I'll give it an F.
F. This is an F.
We'll do
This
an
is
F.
It's a failure.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say it, but yeah, I knew it was a bad signing the day it was made, and it continues to be a bad signing to this point. And he hasn't played in a while. Obviously, he's been out. He's been injured, but he was a -11 in the 21 games that he did play. He scored 1 goal for this team. Only registered 10 shots, just 10 shots through 21 games, and did nothing defensively as well. So yeah, Ryan Reeves unfortunately gets an F. All right, we'll take one more quick break. We'll come back, get to the goalies and the defense. to wrap up our mid-season grades. Listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views and receipt, and a best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. They're also obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up until the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and David Morassutti. We continue our mid-season report card here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. 41 games in the books for Toronto, 41 games upcoming. We're officially at the midway mark. We just went through all the forwards for the Maple Leafs this season. We'll move on to the Blue Liners. And let's start up at the tippy top with our guy, the All-Star, Morgan Rielly. So far this season, through 41 games, he's played all 41, so he's been healthy. 6 goals, 28 points, 28 assists, 34 points through 41 games with an All-Star nomination as well. What are you grading Morgan Rielly?
I'm giving him an A. I think he's picked up where he left off in the playoffs. He looks like a more confident defenseman. He's one of the few defensemen that are on the ice, and I'm not concerned.
Yeah.
He's made good plays defensively. He's taken on tough assignments. He's realized this team has, he got his role of top power play unit guy taken away from him, didn't complain, and now he's back in that role. And he's carried this team in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not even like his points are being padded on the power play. He's got 12 points on the power play, but he's also got 22 at even strength. So, that's pretty impressive. He's got basically as many points at even strength as John Tavares does. So that to tell you something, I agree. I'm giving him an A as well. I think he's been great on both ends of the ice, and you said it. He picked up right where he left off in the playoffs, going beast mode. Like, this is as best as we've seen Morgan Rielly play in a few years. Like, he had that 1 year he had 20 goals, and that was exceptional. He was great that year. We're kind of seeing that player arrive again, and it's confidence, man. It's confidence with the puck. It's confidence coming back and playing defense, making the right decisions, the right reads. Him and TJ Brody have made a formidable pairing once again. And I think when I look at Morgan Rielly, it's just the fact that he's playing with confidence and swagger, man. Like, he is playing a really high level of hockey. And I'm so glad that, the fans voted him into the All-Star, because, man, this guy deserves it. He really, really does. He's having an exceptional season here as the top blue liner for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm with you, giving him an A. Next up, Jake McCabe.
Jake McCabe, I'll give him a C+. I think he's been the victim of not having a consistent defensive partner. Not a great start to the year. I think he's found ways to redeem himself a little bit by being that physical presence on the blue line, but he's had his struggles this year.
Yeah, I think that's a fair grade, actually. I think I'm with you. I'll give him a C+, because early in the season, it was like him and John Klingberg, and maybe we can attribute some of those, struggles to the fact that it was John Klingberg who was his partner. But, man, it did not go well for Jake McCabe the first, 2 weeks of the season. It was bad. He was, bottom 6 or something like that in expected goals against and scoring chances given up. And he was supposed to be the team's top shutdown defender. On a shutdown pair at the very least. Yeah, it wasn't looking good, but then he got injured, came back, and he's been pretty solid ever since. So I think a C+ is probably warranted. A guy also who's been on the ice for, a lot of goals and Hasn't been quite as good on the PK as you'd want as well. But I think a C plus is actually probably an appropriate grade for Jake McCabe. TJ Brody.
C minus.
I'll go C. I'll go C. Why is C minus? Why are you that much of a Brody hater, Dave?
I think he's taken a step back. He's supposed to be the steady guy, and he hasn't really looked steady to me. He's made
Mm.
errors that
A
defensemen
lot of
like him can't be
turnovers. A
making.
lot of turnovers this year, yeah.
Blunders, turnovers, and the penalty kill. He's supposed to be the guy to anchor the penalty kill, and he hasn't really done that,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, maybe talked me into it. Maybe it's been a little bit of a down year and not great for TJ Brody because he's in a contract
Contract
year.
year too.
Yeah.
I know.
I don't know if he's gonna be able. I'm sure he'll still get paid realistically, especially if this team turns it around and has some success. He'll still make money somewhere. I don't think it's gonna be in Toronto though. I really
No.
don't think it's going to be. Timothy Liljegren, just 24 games due to injury, but he's got 9 points through those 24 games. How does Timothy Liljegren grade to you?
A C.
Really? You haven't been a big fan of Lily, huh?
Not lately. I just think he's shown, like, when they need him to play better, he hasn't been able to really do it. I thought he was the guy that was going to potentially step up and alleviate some of the concerns I had on this blue line, especially with Klingberg out. And he just hasn't taken that next step that I expected from him, especially as a top 4 defenseman.
Wow, I think we're on. We see it differently when it comes to Klingberg.
Mhm.
I think I'm gonna give him a B. To be honest with you,
You mean
I've
Liljegren?
liked Liljegren. Sorry, we are on the same page with Klingberg being
Yeah.
a low grade. We'll get to that in a moment, but I think I'm gonna give him a B. I think when he's healthy, he's been a pretty solid player for this group, and I don't know if he necessarily is a top 4 guy or if that's where he needs to be in this lineup. But when he's appropriately placed, as a third pair man, I think he's given you some pretty solid minutes. Like he is a guy who consistently, when you look at natural stat trick after the game, you take a look at the expected goal differential. He's usually up near the top. Like if you look at among all defensemen this year, Liljegren is leading the way with a 56% expected goal differential in all of his 5-on-5 minutes. So I've liked what we've seen out of Liljegren this season. You want to see a little bit more of it consistently, sure. But I think that he's shown me enough on both sides of the ice where I think a B is a warranted grade, in my opinion. Uh, John Klingberg is next. Do we really need to spend much time here? Is an
No.
F a
F.
proper
F.
grade? Yeah, it's did not
Never
go
lived
well.
up to the deal, was never going to live up to that deal.
No. 14 games. He was a -7, and unfortunately, like how much of his play, his very poor play, was due to injury. I guess we'll never know. I guess we can speculate and say maybe that is the reason why it didn't work out, was because he had that groin injury and wasn't able to skate, and that was his bread and butter for many years, and just wasn't really able to do that. And yeah, did not live up to anywhere near up to the expectations that he had coming into the season. Very, very underwhelming. So I think an F is certainly a proper grade for Klingberg. The guy who's kind of stepped in though and had to kind of play in his place at times, Simon Benoit through 27 games. How do you grade his play, Dave?
You know what? I'll give him a B plus.
I'm with you.
He's been bring the physicality, playing above what I expected him. I thought maybe 7th defenseman, get him in once in a while, and he's had to play above his weight, and he's done that. So
He's
I'll
had
give
to
him a
play
B plus.
top 4 minutes, like for that California trip. Like that guy was playing up in the top 4. I get it. It's playing in California against those bottom dwelling teams, but he was still playing it effectively, alongside Jake McCabe there. And again, another guy where surprisingly, you look at the expected goal differential throughout the season, and Simon Benoit is a positive player. And when you think about how, the fact that he's playing a lot of top 4 minutes and as a shutdown guy, the fact that he's a plus player in expected goal differential, speaks to how well he's winning in his minutes, funny enough. So I think I'm with you on a B plus for Simon Benoit. What about Will Lagesson, the guy who kind of came in, neck and neck with Benoit? Clearly, Benoit has gone up like this. We're at with Lagesson.
I'm at like a B minus. I didn't really have big expectations for Legason, but I've actually liked him a little bit more. He's shown, again, he was one of those guys that had to step in when when Klinger got hurt, when Giordano got hurt. He had to play more. And he's doing a pretty good job. Brought the physicality. I like that he, is willing to drop the gloves too. So give him a B minus for what he was.
Yeah. Yeah, I could B minus, I guess is fine. Hasn't had a whole lot on his plate, I suppose. But that being said, he hasn't really been a liability either. So maybe a B minus is kind of an appropriate grade for Will Lagesson. I guess what is Timmins the last player we got here?
Yeah,
Yeah, Connor Timmins, really quickly.
I'll give him a D.
D
He had a
plus.
good preseason.
Come on.
We'll give him, he scored some points. We'll give him a D plus, but yeah, I think he's a guy that if they need to shed salary, he's going to be one of those guys that's going to go.
Yeah, it's 1.1 million that they could definitely shed some salary in. With Simon Benoit and William Lagesson kind of overtaking, I guess, his spot as like a potential seventh defenseman. Yeah, he's kind of the odd man out, I think, and still relatively young-ish at 25, 26, that I would think a team might again try and see, all right, let's see if we can try and do something with this kid. So not that he has much value at all, but as a throw-in, I think is a team might take that project on at the very least. All right, next up, we got to get to the goaltending, and let's start up at the tippy top, pal. Ilya Samsonov. What's your final or your grade at the midway mark of Ilya Samsonov?
Oh, I got to give him a D. He's
very generous. You are generous, my
D
friend.
minus. Fine, I'll do D minus. I don't think it's been a complete.
The guy got sent to the minors, man. The minors.
But okay, to this point, it has been a failure, but I think I'm optimistic that maybe he can turn things around. But through 41 games, yeah, we'll give it an F, but I think D minus is in his future.
Would you like to know what this gentleman's numbers have been so far?
I don't. I think they speak for themselves. Maybe I touched a nerve there.
They do, but I'll just, for those who want to know, he is 5-3-6 on the year with an .863 save percentage and a .388 goals against. Not great. Not great.
Yeah.
F. This has been a failure of a season for Ilya Samsonov. Anytime you go from being a team's number one starter to being in the minors because they can't trust you to put equipment on and stand inside that crease, it's a failure of a season to this point. He could turn it around. He got back into the net over the weekend against Detroit. Didn't look terrible in that game, so he could still turn it around. But to this point, where he's given up like 4+ goals in like 80% of his starts, I just can't get there with anything less than an F grade on Samsonov, or anything more, I suppose. Joseph Woll.
I'm gonna give him an A.
Yeah,
I think he was on his way to saving, being the savior through the Samsonov crisis, and an unfortunate injury derailed that. But he was giving them elite performances before he went down. Not good performances, elite.
Stole some games. And when you can steal games for your team, that's big. That's what you need sometimes from your goaltender. And he did that for the Maple Leafs. A .916 save percentage, a .280 goals against. But there were games there where, he was, saving 2-3 goals above expectation. It was insane, some of the games that he had earlier in the year. So I'm with you. I think that Joseph Woll has been a great player for this team. Maybe an A-. I'll give him an A- because durability is your best ability, and ended
Right.
up getting
Okay.
hurt, right? So I think that's where I'll sit with Joseph Wall. Marty Jones comes in 12 games, or he's had 12 starts, 8-4-1 in those starts, couple shutouts, 924 save percentage, and a 230 goals against average. At a time where goaltending seemed to be a massive question mark for Toronto, this guy came in and settled the net for a couple of weeks. I think Marty Jones has to get an A. Has
Yes,
to get an A.
he has to. You look at the goals saved above the expected, top 10 in the NHL right now.
Number
Yes,
one. Number one. You look at goals saved above
yeah,
expected per 60, number one in the
per
league.
60. Yeah. Yes. Actually think he went down a peg lately. I
Well,
again, depending on where you look on which site you look at too. I'm on Money Puck, and
did
he's
he go
still
down?
he did go down a bit. He's still top 10, which this guy wasn't even supposed to be an NHL option this year for the Leafs, considering he was put on waivers and things like that. But I don't know where this Leafs team would be right now. They would not be a playoff team right now if Martin Jones doesn't come in and save their bacon these last few weeks.
Yeah, it's a good point. He definitely would be. And if you look at okay, so I'm looking at Money Puck right now. So if you put it to players who've played at least 10 games, I guess, he's third now in the league in goals saved above expected per 60. So after those last couple starts, it's gone down a little bit, but still an incredible stat. And definitely he's been a big backbone for the Buds, and certainly was throughout that California swing for sure. All right. Well, that'll do it for the grades in the first half of the Maple Leaf season. Once again, the team's 21-12-8, 50 points, sitting third in their division, currently in a playoff spot, but a couple teams on their heels. And some of these guys that we talked about who received grades that were, quite low, a lot of these, lower Bs and Cs and D level performers, they've got to turn things around through the next 41 games, or else, it's going to be tough sledding through the next half of the season. If there is one player who you gave a low grade to, who really didn't play well in the first half, that you believe can and will turn it around, who do you think that is?
Oh, man. You give me your idea first. Maybe I'll see if I
I
agree.
think I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna give it to TJ Brody.
I'll go
Maybe
with
Brody.
I'll go with Jake McCabe.
Actually, that's a better answer. That's a
I think
better answer.
I think Jake McCabe has more to give. I just don't know if TJ Brody is capable of, like, just because of where he is in his career. I think Jake McCabe has more to
Oh,
offer.
I have a better. I take away my TJ Brody. I
Okay.
was still on thinking defenseman. Wasn't even thinking about forwards. Mitch Marner, because I gave Marner, a
Right.
bit of a lower grade. I think that he's got a lot more to give in the second half. On
Maybe for
both
me it's
sides of the
Timothy.
ice.
For me it's Liljegren and McCabe.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. 41 in the books, 41 more to go. Big road trip coming up with the Western Canadian swing. Got Edmonton on Tuesday. Then you've got Calgary, Vancouver, Seattle, and then a back to back with the Winnipeg Jets. A few of the hottest teams in the league on this upcoming trip before the All Star weekend. Be sure to subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast. We've got new episodes coming out each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. But that'll do it for us here today on the show. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the podcast. You can subscribe to Locked On Leafs on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on X at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Go ahead, leave a like and a comment down below if you enjoyed this video. Let us know some of your grades of these Maple Leafs players down below. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.